Welcome to the section on conditional statements. Conditional statements form a very important part of any programming language, and the Python programming language is no exception to this. Let's see how conditional statements work. Say you have a condition. Now, if this condition is verified, we can take an action, say A. If this condition is not verified, we can take another action, B. Suppose we have several conditions, that is n different conditions. If the first condition, condition 1, is verified, and all the other conditions, that's condition I, where I is different from 1, that is condition 2 right up to condition n, are unverified, then we can take an action, say A1. Else, if this condition 2 is verified and condition 1, condition 3 up to condition n are unverified, we can take an action A2. We can repeat this right up to condition n. If condition n is verified and condition 1 right up to condition n minus 1 unverified, we can take an action an. Now, if none of these conditions are verified, we can take an action an plus 1. Let's get a more practical example. Suppose we want to write a computer program which, when you input the fact that you do sports, is going to tell you whether you're healthy or not. We could simply use condition statements. We have here that if we have sports, that is, if you are sportive, then we shall print out healthy. And if you're not, then we print out unhealthy. Now, we have another example where we have this 4 sports: football, basketball, volleyball, and tennis. Now, we want to print out the action you make whenever you play in any of the sports. So, if football is verified, that is, if you're a footballer, then you kick before the goal is made. Else, if you're a basketballer, you make a throw. If you're a volleyballer, you make a hit. If you're a tennis player, you make a strike. And if you're none of this, we could say the action is unknown. So let's go straight away to look at the syntax of conditional statements in Python. So here we have a variable sports. So we could say sports true. Now, in the section on variable types, we didn't make mention of Booleans. Now, actually, Booleans are some sort of variables which take 2 values, that is true or false. So Booleans can be this true or false. Unlike, say, numbers, which take values like, say, an int, which takes values from negative, say, infinity to positive infinity, which are all whole numbers. We're taking an example. With Booleans, we just have these 2 values. So we either have true or false. Notice that whenever we print out or whenever we type out this true, it automatically turns green. And that's because this is a Python keyword. So let's see how to use this in this example. So we have sports true, and we could say that if sports equals true, we have print healthy. Now we're receiving this error because we haven't used the right operator. Now for this if statement, we have to use the right operator for this to work out well. Instead of the equals, we actually have the double equal sign. So if we replace this with this double equal sign, we shall see how this works out. So that works out now perfectly. It's important to note the syntax of this if statement. We actually have if, we have a condition, we have this colon, and then pressing enter will take us to the next line. Now let's look at another way of presenting this. Instead of putting sports to be equals true, we could just say if sports. Now, if you say if sports, you are doing the same as saying if sports equals true. Now, if we change this true to false, we'll see that this is not going to be printed. So doing this, we have nothing printed out. Now, if we have this, we could say else. So for this, where we had if verified, and now if not verified, that is else, we could have print not healthy, not healthy. And there we go. We'll see that we have printed out not healthy because sports is false. And so when it gets here, this condition is not verified. And if this condition is not verified, we take else. With the else, it's actually the opposite of this. Now, the opposite of this being verified is this being not verified. So we could replace this else with an elif. We could have elif sports equals false. And we should have the same output. So this is the same as just doing else. So that's it. Now let's take this next example. We have, say, sport equals a list made of the different sports a person actually practices. So we have this football, we have basketball, we have volleyball, and finally we have tennis. Now we should say if, so we could put this sports, if football in sports. We could say print this person plays football. elif. Now it's always advisable to put this in brackets. So we could do this. And we have here, so elif basketball in sports, print this person plays basketball. elif basketball in sports, print this person plays volleyball. And finally elif tennis in sports. We have this person plays tennis. Now we have an arrow here. Let's change this to volleyball. And that's it. So let's run this, and we have this person plays football. Now, this person actually has 4 different sports he or she practices. But in this case, or using this method, we actually print out football only. And that's because once we get into this first condition, we print out what we have first. And if this condition is verified, we print this, and all these other conditions aren't going to be looked again. So what the program does, it comes and tests this. If this is verified, it does this, and all of this other conditions aren't looked at. So to solve this problem, where we may have situations like this, where someone may have 4 different sports, we could change the way we look at this. So let's take this, we copy this right here. Now we say if football, we're gonna print this. So we could have print, we could actually copy this, copy this out, we have print this. Now instead of going to the next condition that's shifting to this next line, we could actually test this next condition in this if statement. And that's because if this is verified, we could have the next. Then we have if, so here we have if football in sports, if basketball in sports. We could print out, we could use a tab for us to move safely, avoid using space. Like when you're here, avoid doing this. instead use simply the tab to get to this point. And once we have this, we can print this person plays basketball. But another problem may arise where you aren't playing football, but you print basketball. So suppose we have something like this. So in this case, if football in sports is not going to be verified, so we're not going to get into this. Now we have to make a way that if we have another condition here, we could have another condition where if you're not playing football, we can get into this and test if you're playing basketball. Now let's make this problem a bit simpler. We don't have this. In fact, we have just football and basketball. So here we have the else. We print this person. All right, we don't even print anything. So here we just test if basketball in sports, print this person plays basketball. So there we go. Now we run this. We have this person plays football and this person plays basketball. So let's take away basketball. We have this person plays football. Let's take away football. We have this person plays basketball. But the issue is if we increase this number of sports we could have, it becomes very difficult to work with manually like this, where we could say volleyball. We'll have to add this if, and in this if we have to do an else statement again and then print out for the volleyball and come here again and print for volleyball and so on and so forth. So as we increase the number of possibilities for the sports, it becomes very complicated to code, and that's where loops come in, and that's what we shall see in the next section. With loops we shall see how to solve this problem very easily. So let's get back. We'll work only with this two for now. Let's remove this, reload, everything works fine. Now let's work with some numbers. Say we have this number a equals 5, we have b equals 7. We could test if a equals 5. We print the statement correct. Could you say correct? We could also have if a is less than b, print correct. We could also have if a is greater than b, print not correct. If a, here we have a modulo b, for example, is equals 1, print not correct. And we can load the cell. Loading the cell, we have this first to correct. That's because a equals 5. And then here we have a less than b, which is correct. Now a greater than b, this is not true because a is actually less than b. We have a modulo b, which in this case is actually equals 5 and it's not equals 1, so print out not correct. And since this is not equals 1, we have not printed it out. So we could test this, print a modulo b is clearly 5, which is not equals 1, so we don't get into this. Now notice that with this other way of writing, we get into each and every condition, and that's because once we have this if, the program looks for the next. So if there's, say, an else statement here, you will say print whatever. No matter what you have here, is never going to be printed if this condition is verified. So like this, for example, this whatever is not printed. But when you have this if statement, or when you have this if statement followed by another if statement, this other if statement is going to be looked at. So what the program does is it looks at the if, it looks at whether there's else if, elif, or else, and if that's not there, we just move on. So we go to this if, so we must get into this if. That's different from, say, in this case where we had the elif. With the elif, if this is verified, we don't get into this again. But with the if, even if this is verified or if it's verified, this other condition is gonna be tested. Now let's look at the less than or equals condition. So here we have the less than or equals operation. So we have this. Now let's get what we have here. So we have this correct, this less than or equals b. This is actually correct because this is less than. So one of the conditions are verified. In this case, not correct. This case, not correct. So now let's suppose these two are the same. So let's put this to 5. We have that this other one is printed out. And that's simply because, let's take this out. And that's simply because with a less than or equals, we are saying, in this case, if it's less than or equals, print correct. In this case, this is actually equal, so we have no problem with that. In this case, if it's greater than or equals, we can do this. So this is the same as saying if a is greater than b or a is equals b. So this is the same statement. Let's comment this. So there we go. Now we could take this off and run this. We still have the same output. We could also have if a equals 5 replaced with if a is 5. So we could have this, and we see that it's actually printed out. Now let's take this off. Here we have if a is 5, correct. So this is another way of writing this equals. So we just test this direct. Now if a is not 5, we see that nothing is printed. So we could have else print nothing is printed. So there we go. Now that we've seen this, we shall go to loops.